What if your soul could get sick? Not in a metaphorical sense. I mean truly sick. What if it could develop a spiritual gangrene, a rot that eats away at you from the inside, long before your body ever fails? There are poisons that don't target the flesh. There are diseases that don't show up on any medical scan. A forgotten saint, in a vision that terrified her to her core, saw exactly how this decay begins. She saw the 5 specific sins that cause a soul to rot while it's still alive. The account comes from the writings of Sister Katerina, a mystic from the 17th century, whose works were sealed away for being too disturbing. In her vision, she wasn't shown the fires of hell or dramatic punishments. She was shown something far more intimate and far more horrifying. She saw souls as living things, glowing, vibrant lights. And then she was forced to watch as certain souls began to dim, to tarnish, to decay from within. It wasn't an attack from the outside. It was an internal collapse. She identified 5 specific catalysts, 5 spiritual diseases that initiated this rot. And the first one is the very foundation of the soul turning to sand. If you find this kind of deep exploration of faith and spirituality important, consider subscribing. We go into the topics others are afraid to touch. The decay begins with pride, but not the pride of a job well done. The vision described a far more insidious kind. It's the deep, internal whisper that you are your own God. It's the quiet decision that your judgment is superior to divine law, that your will is more important than the will of your Creator. In the vision, souls infected with this pride began to harden. They lost their light, their flexibility, and became brittle. They looked strong, magnificent even, like polished statues, but they were hollow. This pride is the act of sealing your own heart. It convinces you that you don't need mercy, because you've done nothing wrong. You don't need grace, because your own strength is sufficient. It's the soul declaring independence from its source of life. And just like a building severed from its foundation, the collapse is not a matter of if, but when. Next, the saint witnessed the rot of envy. She described it not as a desire for what others have, but as a deep-seated bitterness that they have it at all. It's the spiritual equivalent of drinking poison and hoping the other person dies. A soul tainted by envy cannot perceive its own blessings. All it can see is the light in others, and it hates that light. In the vision, these souls began to leak their own essence. Their light didn't just dim, it flowed outwards, turning gray and toxic, poisoning the space around them. Envy makes joy impossible, because another's success feels like a personal failure. Another's happiness feels like a deliberate slight. It is the rot of comparison, the disease of a heart that can only define itself by what it lacks in relation to others. It starves the soul in a world of abundance, convincing it to feast on bitterness instead of gratitude. The third rot was perhaps the most tragic, because it was a passive decay. It is sloth. The old texts called it asadia, a spiritual apathy. This is not about being lazy on a Sunday afternoon. It is the persistent refusal of the soul to do the good it knows it should do. It is the slow, creeping paralysis that whispers, "It doesn't matter." Why bother? In the vision, souls afflicted with acedia simply stopped vibrating. Their light ceased to pulse. They became like stagnant ponds, still and lifeless. The soul is meant to be active to love, to create, to pray, to grow. Sloth suffocates it by convincing it to do nothing. It's the sin of the missed opportunity, the unsaid kind word, the ignored call to be better. It doesn't kill the soul with a bang, but with a slow, silent, dust-settling stillness, until all that's left is a monument to what could have been. Now we come to the rot that Sister Katerina said caused the angels to weep. Despair. This is the sin that locks hell from the inside. Despair is not sadness. It is the absolute conviction that you are beyond saving. It is the soul looking at the infinite mercy of God and saying, "Not for me," it's a final, terrible judgment that you pronounce upon yourself. In the vision, these souls were not cast into darkness. They actively chose it. She saw light, representing God's mercy, flooding towards them, available, waiting. But the soul, in its despair, would build a wall around itself, brick by brick, refusing to let the light in. It mistakes its sin for its identity. It believes the stain is so deep, it has become the fabric itself. This is the ultimate insult to the divine, to believe your capacity to sin is greater than God's capacity to forgive. It is the soul performing its own execution. The final rot was the only one that was contagious. It is the sin of scandal. This is the act of leading another person into sin, of normalizing vice, of poisoning the well for others. It's using your own decay to infect those who look up to you, trust you, or follow your example. A person who does this makes their own soul a carrier of a spiritual plague. In the vision, these souls were the most terrifying. Their rot didn't just consume them. It spread like a shadow. For every soul they led astray, a dark cord would attach to them, draining them further, accelerating their own collapse while initiating it in another. This sin is a profound corruption of our purpose. We are meant to be lights for each other. Scandal is the act of becoming a black hole, pulling other, weaker lights into your own darkness. It's a betrayal, not just of God, but of the entire human family. But the vision did not end in darkness. For each of the 5 rots, Sister Katerina was shown a powerful antidote. For the hardened foundation of pride, the cure was the humility of a child, the simple act of asking for help. For the poisoned well of envy, the cure was active gratitude, the discipline of thanking God for another's blessing as if it were your own. For the still air of sloth, the antidote was a single, small act of love, a tiny motion that breaks the paralysis and lets the air move again. For the self-made prison of despair, the cure was an act of pure, irrational hope, a whisper for mercy even when you feel you don't deserve it. And for the plague of scandal, the antidote was to become a source of radical goodness, to work twice as hard to build up what you once tore down. The vision was a warning, not a sentence. The rot could be stopped. The decay could be reversed. This 17th century vision serves as a mirror. It forces us to ask a difficult question. Are there parts of our soul that feel brittle, bitter, stagnant? Are we locking doors or spreading shadows? Recognizing the disease is the first step toward the cure. The war for your soul is not fought on some distant battlefield. It is fought in the quiet, unseen choices you make every single day. Which of these 5 spiritual dangers resonates most with you in the world you see today? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below.